Before Christmas, a young girl vanished from her bedroom in the dead of night, leaving no trace behind. The case immediately sparked immense public interest, drawing over 3,000 people into the desperate search. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered several shocking details that would ultimately lead them to unravel the truth behind this high-profile disappearance. Sarah Foxwell entered the world on the 18th of May, 1998, in Salisbury, Maryland, a small city nestled in the United States. Growing up, Sarah was surrounded by a vibrant, bustling household. She had 2 sisters and 4 brothers, creating a lively atmosphere filled with laughter and the occasional sibling squabble. Adding to the tapestry of her family life, her mother had 3 children from a previous marriage. Unfortunately, Sarah's parents eventually parted ways, leaving her mother to navigate life's challenges as a single parent. Supporting all her children alone was just one part of the challenge. She also had to care for them. The mother had to work tirelessly, which meant the children often stayed with relatives. Sarah, the middle child, was the most optimistic of the bunch. Whenever her siblings quarreled, she did her best to bring peace, and more often than not, she succeeded. In December of 2009, when Sarah was 11, she and her siblings temporarily moved in with their aunt, grandmother, and grandfather. Christmas had passed, and Sarah's mother was working harder than usual, picking up extra shifts to afford gifts for each of her children. Sarah's aunt resided in a sprawling farmhouse on the outskirts of Salisbury. The children adored this place. The vast grounds offered them seemingly limitless space to explore. The 22nd of December started like any other day, but with only 3 days until Christmas, an air of excitement bubbled within them. They dashed through the house, their laughter echoing as they played and reveled in the anticipation of the holiday. Around 9 in the evening, after Aunt ordered pizza for dinner, the children began to prepare for bed. Sarah shared a room with her 6-year-old sister Emma. Their room was situated at the very end of the hallway, closest to the back door. The 2 girls chattered for a while before drifting off to sleep. The next morning, Sarah's grandfather woke up and went to rouse the children. He entered Sarah and Emmy's room, only to find the younger girl there alone. He thought perhaps Sarah was already awake, but she was nowhere to be found in the house. He told her aunt, and together they began a frantic search, peering into every nook and cranny. Realizing Sarah wasn't inside, her aunt initially hoped she'd wandered out to play in the fresh snow that had fallen overnight. However, she quickly noticed Sarah's boots and coat were still inside. Soon, the aunt noticed something quite odd. She glanced into the bathroom and noticed Sarah's toothbrush was gone from its usual spot. After she and her grandfather searched the grounds around the house without finding Sarah, her aunt decided to call Sarah's mother. The woman arrived quickly, and they contacted the police. Officers arrived at the scene, and their first action was to conduct a thorough search of the house themselves. Sarah's aunt mentioned that she checked all the doors and windows every night before bed, and she had definitely made sure they were locked the previous evening. The officers meticulously searched the entire house, but Sarah was nowhere to be found. Given the unsettling detail that the girl's toothbrush was missing, abduction immediately became a strong consideration. Soon, further evidence surfaced, reinforcing this disturbing theory. The officers double-checked every possible exit, ensuring all windows and doors were indeed secured. Reaching the back door, adjacent to Sarah's room, they tried the handle. To their dismay, it yielded, swinging open to the unknown. Auntie insisted the door had been locked the previous evening and hadn't been opened since. However, a thought struck her. A spare key was usually hidden near the door on the street side. She rushed to check, only to find, to her dismay, the key was gone. This discovery only reinforced the suspicion of an abduction. The fact the culprit knew the key's hiding place suggested a disturbing familiarity with her family. That night, an eerie silence hung in the air. Their dog, usually a vigilant sentinel, didn't utter a single bark, a fact that struck them as odd. This unsettling detail spurred the investigators into immediate action, launching an extensive search for the missing girl. News of Sarah's disappearance spread like wildfire through the surrounding areas, and a wave of concern washed over the community. Many people stepped forward, eager to assist the police in any way they could. Sharev, appealing directly through the media, urged residents to meticulously check their properties for anything out of the ordinary, hoping to uncover a crucial clue that could lead them to Sarah. Dozens of officers immediately joined the search. The entire local police force was absent, bolstered by reinforcements from neighboring cities and even states. Driven by the hope of finding the girl alive, and with the knowledge that the perpetrator had taken her toothbrush, indicating a possible long-term abduction, they focused their efforts on the search. Their first clue awaited them near the house. In the snow, they discovered relatively recent tire tracks, leading them to believe that the abductor had arrived in that vehicle. Sarah's warm clothes were all still at home, making it clear she couldn't have been led away on foot. Meanwhile, Sarah's relatives arrived at the police station, where a surprising turn of events unfolded. The 6-year-old sister of the missing girl, who shared a room with her, tugged at her grandmother's sleeve and whispered that she had a secret. She claimed to have seen the person who took Sarah. According to the little girl, she woke up when the man was saying something to her sister. Emma was gripped by a primal fear, an understanding of danger she couldn't articulate. Instinct took over, and she feigned sleep, hoping to disappear into the shadows. Moments stretched into an eternity. Then she saw him. He led Sarah out of the room, their figures disappearing into the unknown. The tale Emma recounted sent tremors through her family, but the worst was yet to come. With trembling certainty, Emma uttered the man's name. It was Mr. Tommy. Thomas Lex, aged 30, a name that immediately clicked with the adults. He was none other than Aunt Sarah's ex-boyfriend. Their relationship had ended only a few months prior, but during their time together, he was a constant presence in their home, becoming a familiar face to all the children. However, Thomas was even more well-known to the police, thanks to a substantial criminal record. Over the years, he had repeatedly come to their attention for offenses involving the abuse of women and girls. His first incarceration occurred when he was 18. Thomas committed a heinous act against a 12-year-old girl, resulting in a 4-year prison sentence. However, he was released prematurely after only a few months. Later, he was sentenced to 7 years for abusing another minor. Yet, inexplicably, he was released early once more, only serving 6 months due to supposed good behavior. Soon after regaining his freedom, he was handed a 6-month sentence for yet another instance of child abuse. Furthermore, on the very day his wife returned home from the hospital with their newborn daughter, he attempted to assault another girl. Later, his marriage crumbled, ending in divorce and a restraining order against Thomas after he threatened to kill his wife and their young daughter. Another unsettling incident unfolded when a woman and her little girl moved onto the same street as him. One day, the girl was sitting on her porch with a friend when Thomas approached them. He told one of the girls that he had been watching her play in the yard, calling her a wild child. Then he picked up a branch and began hitting her on the bottom. The girl burst through the door, breathlessly recounting the day's unsettling events to her mother. Peering through the window, the woman's blood ran cold as she recognized Thomas. His face was chillingly familiar. Before their move, she had meticulously checked the registry of known offenders in their new neighborhood. Thomas's photograph had been there, a stark warning she hadn't heeded closely enough. Driven by fear, the mother contacted the police. The case was brought before the court, but despite her efforts, Thomas managed to evade justice. Before the proceedings commenced, a request was made. The woman was asked to refrain from mentioning Thomas's presence on the sex offender registry and his prior conviction for abuse. This request stemmed from concerns that such information could prejudice the trial, potentially leading to an unfair verdict against Thomas. A mere handful of months before Sarah's disappearance, Thomas had once again found himself in the crosshairs of law enforcement. He had trespassed into the bedroom of a 24-year-old woman in the dead of night, disrobing and proceeding to sexually gratify himself as he stood beside her bed. The man was apprehended, but he posted bail and was released, pending his trial. Thomas had meticulously concealed his criminal past from his Aunt Sarah, but the truth, as it always does, eventually surfaced. Yet through some skillful maneuvering and silver-tongued persuasion, he managed to convince her that the accusations were fabricated, that he was innocent of the crimes he was accused of. With this in mind, the detectives felt certain that Thomas was responsible for Sarah's disappearance. Family members also recalled how, during Thomas's visits, he seemed to dote on Sarah, paying her an unusual amount of attention. At the time, nobody thought much of it, but in light of Sarah's vanishing, this detail took on a sinister hue. Police arrived promptly at Thomas's residence for questioning. The man resided just a few kilometers away in a shed on his parents' property. Detectives brought him in for interrogation and subsequently obtained a warrant to search the shed. Inside, they found a chaotic scene with appalling living conditions, but no evidence linking him to Sarah's disappearance. However, officers uncovered a vast collection of magazines and 9 DVDs of sexually explicit material. The shed was in complete disarray, overflowing with clutter. During the interrogation, Thomas immediately denied any involvement in Sarah's disappearance. He claimed he had been struggling with personal demons, alluding to an urge to commit crimes against young girls. Thomas stated that during the time he was seeing Sarah's aunt, he made a conscious effort to avoid being alone with children, to prevent any false accusations of wrongdoing. When confronted with Emma's testimony that she had seen him on the night of the abduction, Thomas dismissed the girl's statement, insisting that she had a history of fabricating stories. Detectives eyed Thomas with unconcealed skepticism. It wasn't merely his checkered past that fueled their mistrust. As he recounted the vanishing of 11-year-old Sarah, a disquieting smile played on his lips, an unsettling smirk that suggested he believed his crime was flawless, beyond the reach of the law. Despite the unsettling display, Thomas confidently asserted an unshakable alibi. He claimed to have spent the entire evening at a bar with a friend, remaining there until the late hours. The investigators promptly moved to verify his account, and what they uncovered was truly astonishing. Thomas's alibi seemed solid at first. He was indeed spotted at a bar that night, but there was a hitch. He left around 1 o'clock in the morning, and no one, not even his parents, saw him again until 7 a.m. Intriguingly, his phone records revealed a flurry of late-night texts to several female acquaintances, all propositions for a rendezvous. Every one of them turned him down. Despite these inconsistencies, the detectives couldn't crack Thomas. Holding on to a fragile hope that the girl was still alive, they redirected their energy, throwing every available resource into the desperate search for her. Inside the suspect's pickup truck, officers quickly discovered several key pieces of evidence. A green toothbrush belonging to Sarah was found, along with a large lollipop. Investigators speculated that Thomas may have used the candy to lure the girl into the vehicle. Furthermore, the truck's tire tracks matched those left in the snow outside Sarah's house on the night she disappeared. The man had told detectives he hadn't been to the house in over a month, and now they had proof he was lying. With the suspect maintaining his innocence, the police were left to rely on their own efforts to find Sarah. Several hundred officers and volunteers began scouring the area, covering a radius of many kilometers from her home. They meticulously searched abandoned buildings, dense forests, deep ravines, and murky bodies of water. K-9 units with trained search dogs worked tirelessly to pick up the girl's scent, while helicopters surveyed the landscape from above. From day one, the case resonated deeply within the community, sparking an overwhelming response from local residents. Despite the looming holidays and foul weather, they arrived at the police station, eager to sign up as volunteers. Sadly, that day's search proved fruitless, yet the police weren't deterred, venturing out again with the dawn's first light. Throughout this time, the stream of compassionate locals not only persisted, but swelled. In all, 3,000 individuals joined the search effort. The sheriff was compelled to relocate headquarters to a large baseball stadium, as the police station simply couldn't accommodate such a multitude. Amidst the sea of volunteers, young faces mirrored the determination of their elders as they handed out water, steaming tea, and nourishing food to those tirelessly searching. Every person contributed, fueled by the collective hope of finding Sarah alive. Meanwhile, investigators uncovered the first undeniable clue, a thread that directly linked Thomas to the abduction. Once in custody, the suspect was given a fresh set of clothes, while his own were immediately dispatched to the lab for thorough analysis. Forensic experts made a crucial discovery. Foreign DNA was found on the suspect's underwear. This DNA was meticulously compared to a sample obtained from Sarah's belongings, revealing a complete match. Considering the location of the DNA, the detectives reached a grim and heartbreaking conclusion. It appeared that Thomas had violated Sarah after her abduction. The second day of the desperate search yielded no further leads. On the morning of December 25th, animosity, fueled by thousands, spilled onto the streets once more. Despite the holiday, none seemed willing to abandon their cause. That same day, investigators received data regarding Thomas's phone location. Sadly, it wasn't a precise pinpoint, only information about its connection to cellular towers before it went offline. Police discovered that on the night of Sarah's disappearance, the device had pinged 3 different towers. With this, they managed to narrow down the approximate area where the man might be. Investigators focused their efforts on a wooded area near the state line, about 9 miles from Aunt Sarah's house. The area was a labyrinth of trees and narrow paths. Hundreds of searchers meticulously combed through the undergrowth, clinging to the hope that a Christmas miracle would bring Sarah home safe. But the harsh reality proved far more grim. Around 4 in the afternoon, police officers discovered the body of a young girl near the state line. She was lying on her back, her arms twisted upwards, as if pointing towards the heavens. The medical examiners who arrived on the scene were met with a grim and shocking sight. Firstly, it was clear she had been assaulted. Secondly, there were marks indicating attempted strangulation, though it appeared the perpetrator had failed to end her life in that manner. Experts examining the victim's lungs made a grim discovery: traces of mud, suggesting a desperate struggle for air in a puddle. It seemed she lost consciousness during this ordeal. What followed was even more horrific. Severe burns ravaged her body. Investigators believe the perpetrator, after leaving her in the woods, callously returned with gasoline and set Sarah ablaze. The presence of smoke in her lungs confirmed the unspeakable. She was alive when the flames consumed her. The fact that her body was discovered in such a state indicated she was alive at the moment the fire engulfed her. This explained the position of her arms, reaching toward the sky as if in a desperate plea. Such contortions sometimes occur when a person is exposed to intense heat. The sheer brutality of the crime sent a shockwave through everyone involved. Seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend the atrocities inflicted upon the young girl. With the grim truth of Sarah's fate unveiled, a unified demand echoed through the community: justice in the form of Thomas's execution. Though he maintained a stubborn denial of guilt, the evidence mounted against him relentlessly. Following the discovery of Sarah's body, a meticulous examination of Thomas's pickup truck revealed several of her hairs embedded in the front seat. Further, fragments of fabric matching her pajamas were also discovered, solidifying his connection to her abduction. These findings, coupled with the existing evidence, all but extinguished any hope Thomas might have held for evading punishment. The agonizing wait for the trial stretched on for over 12 months. The trial never commenced. In the early years of the 2010s, the prosecution extended an offer to Thomas: plead guilty and receive life imprisonment, thereby avoiding the death penalty. Considering his crime against Sarah, this agreement might seem unjust. However, significant arguments supported this decision. The primary reason was to spare the victim's younger sister from repeatedly testifying in court, forced to recount the horrific events in the presence of her sister's murderer. The abduction and subsequent death of her sister had already inflicted profound psychological trauma. A drawn-out trial threatened to exacerbate the damage. Furthermore, prosecutors weren't entirely confident in securing a death penalty. A lesser sentence, on the other hand, would have opened the possibility of parole for Thomas at some point. This avenue was foreclosed by the plea agreement. Moreover, the state governor's opposition to capital punishment at the time further weakened the likelihood of the ultimate sentence being imposed. Thomas finally relented, confessing to the detectives everything they already knew. He admitted to luring the young girl from her home under false pretenses, driving her to a remote location where he assaulted and murdered her. He received 2 life sentences without parole and was transferred to a maximum security prison. Within days, another inmate attacked him in the dining hall, inflicting multiple serious cuts. Thomas survived, and prison authorities implemented extra security measures to protect him from other prisoners eager to exact their own form of justice. The case of Sarah sparked significant outrage, revealing a flawed system that repeatedly granted Thomas opportunities to be released and reoffend. As a direct consequence, the state of Maryland enacted Sarah's law, mandating that anyone convicted of child abuse must serve a minimum of 15 years in prison before becoming eligible for parole.